Please be seated. And welcome to the University of Maryland School of Public Policy 2013 commencement exercises. I'm Don Kettle, Dean of the Maryland School of Public Policy, and I'm delighted to present this year's graduating class. We're excited to share with all of you the excitement and pride that comes from the completion of this important step in their lives. The School of Public Policy is a lifetime experience, and our days together in College Park are only the preface. We're very, very proud of what we know lies ahead. This is a graduating class that has already had enormous accomplishment. Our graduates are beginning new and exciting careers with organizations including the State Department, the Defense Department, the World Bank, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, U.S. Navy JAG Corps, you may have seen it on TV, LMI Government Consulting, IBM Business Global Solutions, and the Marriott Foundation. We also have some graduates heading to a wide variety of government security agencies, but we aren't allowed to tell you which agencies, and we can't tell you their names. But a few of our graduates are also moving on to doctoral studies. 3 are presidential management fellows. It's a truly extraordinary group that is sure to make its mark on the policy world, and we're very, very proud of them. Congratulations. We often think about graduation somehow as the end of the line, but actually once upon a time, people actually wore things like this to work, which just is one of those life lessons that we want to commend to our graduates. Never take fashion advice from monks. In the 1500s, when people actually did this when they came to work, graduation meant taking a step forward. Today, we celebrate the steps that you've already taken. Your wise decision to come to the University of Maryland School of Public Policy, your project courses, your term papers, internships, thousands of emails. For our doctoral students, there are comprehensive exams and the dissertations, and we celebrate your success here today. Closely associated with graduation is the word commencement, whose roots go back even further to the 1200s. Now, commencement comes from the word beginning, and in fact, the French used the word to celebrate the coronation and the consecration of a priest. So there's an even deeper meaning to what we're doing here today. A celebration focused not on the end, but on a beginning and the start of a journey consecrated to a very high purpose. When we put these ideas together, we have an even more special reason to celebrate. We celebrate the step that you're taking, we celebrate your start on the next part of your journey, and we celebrate the noble purpose in the public interest that makes this graduation so special. We celebrate on top of that one thing that makes it even more special, which is your commitment to public policy, to the public service, and to the impact that we know that your lives and your careers will make, and that we celebrate here today. Now, no one can make a journey like this by traveling alone. Graduates, you have many, many family and friends gathered here today. You really can't imagine how proud they are of you, or the relief that they're feeling right now, too. Let's give them a real thank you. Graduates, please stand and congratulate. Now, each year, the students select a classmate to make a few remarks. This year's graduates selected Michael Rosenberg. Michael graduates today with a Master of Public Policy degree with a specialization in social policy. For the past 3 years, he has focused his studies on immigration policy. He's currently chairman of the Frederick Immigration Coalition, an interfaith activist organization that's dedicated to promoting justice and respect for all, regardless of immigration status. This past January, Michael published the feature article in Frederick magazine on the topic of undocumented immigration. After graduating, Michael will spend a month in Israel before returning to Frederick, where he will manage a pedicab company and continue to lead advocacy efforts in the community on behalf of immigration. I'm proud to present to you Michael Rosenberg.
Hello, my friends. It's good to see you. 2 weeks ago, when I found out that I would have this honor, I thought of what audience would be in front of me, these aspiring catalysts who would go on to influence the American political process, have a hand in international development, lead nonprofits. And I thought, why did these people vote for me? I'm 22 years old. I experienced the 80s as a fetus, and only a fetus. And my last job, of course, was managing a rickshaw company. So what wisdom could I have to bestow unto you? So I proceeded by doing one of the things that I do best. I asked for help. First, I turned to my extraordinary friend, Dr. Suhail Bashroui. Dr. Bashroui was born in Nazareth. At around my age, some 60 years ago, he convinced an aspiring nun to marry him instead of joining the covenant. After getting his PhD in English literature from Oxford with the advice of his wife, Mary, he rejected a lucrative job offer from an oil company and instead took a vow of poverty in service to humanity. The two lived together through 3 civil wars voluntarily. Bashroui the whole time was working as an interfaith peacekeeper, always searching for harmony hidden in the chaos. He was looking for a common denominator that would serve as the keys to peace during conflict. And eventually he found his way to College Park, where I had the honor and the pleasure of being his student and his friend. So I went to Dr. Bashroui and I asked him for help. I asked him what I might say to this audience today. Referencing the great Irish poet George William Russell, he told me, "The politics of time should serve the politics of eternity." He said that we must always remember the wisdom of humility. We must take a holistic approach to public policy, which is based not primarily on the cold ethic of the market, but rooted on uncompromising values, which originate from the heart and emerge within the mind. This, I felt, was some righteous wisdom, but I also felt compelled to keep seeking, always keep seeking. So a year ago, this week actually, the day after Mother's Day, I had the pleasure of meeting Professor Sybil Dawit. She's Director of Peace Studies at Goucher College in Baltimore. She's an amazing woman. When she was my age, she was traveling around Africa. She found a real talent for writing grant requests, and she would make a few $100s here, a few thousand there, and she would stretch it out, doing as best she could for the community, working amongst the people, doing whatever she thought was necessary. She told me, "I do not have my PhD. My experience is my PhD, and nobody challenges that." And now she prepares people for a life of teaching. She emphasized the importance of using our education as a complement to real-world experience. And here I stand now about to graduate. Earlier today, I was sitting on the stairs next to my bicycle outside of McKeldin, staring out on the mall. This is the end of 5 years for me here at school, so it was a nostalgic moment. I felt as if I was looking into an ocean of uncertainty and frightful opportunity that I'm about to embark on for the rest of my life. I don't know what lies ahead. And so I wrote to Professor Dawit, and I sought out her wisdom once again. I asked, first of all, what should I say on this stage today? "Perhaps," she wrote, "your speech could include advice about how and when to seek advice. You know something about that and could speak to it well. It could include the value of conviction as the engine of good works. Remind them that there is such a thing as good works and that this is the purpose of public service. That guilt is not an adequate motivation for the magnitude of work the world needs in the coming century, and that high-impact interventions for the public good require more strategy and more expeditiousness in the future than has been brought to them in the past." My fellow graduates, once again, our human civilization seems to be ushering in a brave new world. The rise of information technology and social media is changing the way we think, changing the way we engage with one another. The sheer quantity of stories and opinions and shared experiences that we now have access to at the end of our fingertips is exponentially greater than it was just a generation ago. We now have the tools to seek advice from millions at any moment, and whether this serves as a grand distraction or a wellspring of ingenuity is ultimately up to us and how we choose to engage with these new forms of communication. You know as well as I the immensity, complexity, and volume of challenges we face now as a society is sobering. But if we desire to be agents of change, we must remember our original and interminable codependence on our fellow human beings. This codependence, to me, is a truth which I find to be as humbling as it is inspiring. I've heard it said that wonder is not an event, it is a state of being. The same can be said for seeking help. Saturating our thinking with the wisdom of others, incorporating the sagacity of our friends and those we look up to into our lives and professional careers, these are not merely actions that we should engage in from time to time. Seeking help can be a way of life, an approach that guides the way we navigate complex problems and wrestle with life's most humbling challenges. By virtue of our education, we find ourselves in a unique position to engage the world. If we neglect to incorporate the wisdom of others into our most important decisions, this is like forgetting the flour when baking a loaf of bread. What you might get, it might be a little sweet, a little salty, but it will certainly not be satisfying and it will not be complete. So knowing how and when to seek advice in your most worthy endeavors and doing it often is not simply valuable, it is essential. So please, take my advice, what little I have to give at this stage in my life. Open your mind and heart to the wisdom and unique human experience that so many have to offer. Share your gifts, share your experiences, and always encourage others to do the same. I've had an amazing experience at this school over the last 5 years. I've been very thankful to have learned from and alongside all of you. And I'm really, truly honored to have this opportunity to speak to you here today. So we all have a lot of work to do. I wish you all the best, and congratulations.
Congratulations, Michael, and thank you for those words, reminding us that in many ways, what the school does best is trying to prepare our students for the problems that haven't even been invented yet. And your words give us a guide to follow. Thanks so much. In addition to selecting a student to speak to the graduates each year also select a member of the school's faculty to address them on the final day at the School of Public Policy. And this year, for the second time, the students have selected Professor Christopher Foreman. Chris Foreman is a professor at the school and directs the social policy program. He came to the school in 2000 after more than a decade at the Brookings Institution. His book, Signals from the Hill, Congressional Oversight and the Challenge of Social Regulation, won the D.B. Hardeman Prize for the best book on Congress. And on top of that, a little secret, he's also a superb organist. And it's with great delight now that I give you Professor Chris Foreman.
Oh my God. Let me say how gratified I am to be able to address you on this occasion. I say that for two reasons. First, it seems enough of you apparently thought me worth listening to for at least 5 more minutes. Second, I'm always happiest to talk when I don't have to assign any reading. If I assign it to you, that means I have to read it too, and then everyone ends up less happy. What I want to convey today, I suppose, comes down to a stance easily grasped but challenging to execute: pragmatic perseverance. Most of you came here because you want to make the world a better place, or at least that's what you said in all of those application essays I read. You've acquired here some specific skills that will help you. But critical things that we cannot so easily teach include, first, the good judgment, necessary to interpret a situation correctly and respond appropriately, and secondly, the fortitude, indeed sometimes the iron stomach, necessary to engage the world and its problems and the inevitable setbacks that you must face as you make your way. Certainly, managerial or policy success, when and if it comes to you, will almost always be partial and hard-fought, with the work, whatever it is, never really being fully done. As you absorbed in various ways from many of us, after every success of policy creation, there should come attention to implementation and evaluation. You must contend with those who would ignore these. And as many of you have learned in my class specifically, policy victories can only be sustained over time by creating political environments that continue to nurture them over time. All of this takes pragmatic perseverance. You all know that the United States, for all its power and success, remains a deeply imperfect enterprise. You also know that much of what is imperfect about it stems from things that resist easy modification or strategies of compensation. They include decisions made decades or even centuries ago, the attachments and expectations that form around these, collective cultural predispositions, and the unavoidable fact that human freedom entails the freedom to behave unwisely. That includes, I regret to say, the freedom to embrace and take refuge in sometimes destructive expectations and identities. Yes, African American children can achieve academically and must be discouraged at every step from embracing a self-image that proclaims otherwise. By the same token, many of us recall how many gay men in the 1970s and 80s would regularly and self-destructively embrace an otherness that held them as somehow beyond the need for committed relationships. You remember the routine. Marriage? We don't have any marriage. We don't need any marriage. We don't have to show you no stinking marriage. When something desirable and theoretically possible seems nevertheless unattainable, it is a natural defensive response to dismiss it as unwanted. The combination of a vast and heterogeneous democracy with a vibrant market economy means that each of us has many ideas, affinities, and products from which to choose. It also means that each of us must tolerate a great deal that we do not like. Were I writing on a blank slate a constitution for the United States, I certainly would not have engineered anything like our current electoral process. I would not have singled out gun rights, certainly not with anything resembling the current language. All other stable democracies manage to thrive without it, and so far appear at no risk of descent into tyranny as a result. And needless to say, I would have looked with extreme disfavor at any provision allowing some people to own other people as property. But the country into which I was born 61 years ago had been designed with these things built in, and both you and I have no choice but to cope as best we can with their legacy effects. And one more thing. This perseverance by you is not just about you. Remember all those application essays again. You will take away from this institution, I hope, an enhanced skill at forging and nurturing cooperative endeavors of all kinds. At this very same occasion, 1 year ago, my faculty colleague, Rob Sprinkle, Professor Rob Sprinkle, uttered words that I swore to repeat were I ever again privileged to stand before you as faculty speaker. I quote, "We are members of a cooperative species. Our lives are nearly wall-to-wall cooperation, and our disputes, civil and criminal, are mostly about failures to cooperate, failures to get along, to do one's duty, to obey laws, to fulfill contracts, to play fairly, and to pay fairly. We compete mostly by out-cooperating others." Unquote. I close with my summary point now obvious. The pragmatic perseverance I urge upon you has one overarching purpose: creating and sustaining the cooperation essential to the equitable thriving and indeed the collective survival of our species. Thank you and good luck.
Thanks so much, Chris, for those inspirational words, and thanks, too, for your service as chair of our admissions committee. Chris Foreman truly is one of those people without whom this day would not have been possible, because none of you would have been here. Many of our graduates have been the recipients of special awards and honors during the course of their time here at the School of Public Policy. They have distinguished themselves as future public leaders, activists, and scholars. First, I'm delighted to honor the graduates who have received named fellowship awards during their tenure here at the school. The names of the fellowships appear at the back of your program, and if you received one of those named fellowships, please stand up now so that we might recognize and honor you. Please stand if your name appears there. Congratulations. Now, Professor Robert Grimm will recognize the fellows in our National Honor Society, Pi Alpha Alpha. Professor Robert Grimm directs the school's new Center on Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership, which has created the extremely popular Do Good Challenge, which has featured celebrities like actor Kevin Bacon, comedian Fran Drescher, and Olympian Carl Lewis as celebrity judges as students from across the university compete to do good. His work inside the classroom and out to develop new, innovative, and entrepreneurial leaders has been hailed by the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, among many others. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Robert Grimm.
The Pi Alpha Alpha National Honor Society encourages and recognizes outstanding scholarship and accomplishment in public policy and administrative education, as well as integrity, professionalism, and effective performance in the conduct of government and related public service activities. Only students and graduates meeting the highest academic standards are invited to Pi Alpha Alpha. I am delighted to recognize the students from this year's Maryland School of Public Policy graduating class who have been so honored. As I announce the inductees, I would like them to please stand and remain standing until each name has been announced. Please hold your applause until all the names have been announced. And the PAA Honor Society inductees for this year's graduates are Aaron Barker, Joseph Bledsoe, Kathy Chang, William Chodkowski, Lindsay Earhart, Ian Feller, Jonathan Ferguson, Stephanie Foner, Michael Garber, Rosario Japson, Ranghee Kim, Caitlin Latner, Vincent Liu, Taylor Moore, Wesley Newman, Stephen Ollig, Mark Perlman, Chad Perman, Colin Romaser, Nicholas Roth, Amber Sells, Michael Spitz, and Rachel Tennant. Please give them a round of applause.
Professor Catherine Kelleher will now present the Presidential Management Fellowship recipients. Professor Kelleher earned her PhD at MIT and is a specialist in international security and American defense policy. She founded the school's Center for International and Security Studies at Maryland, She has served as President Clinton's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia, as the Secretary of Defense's representative to NATO in Brussels, on President Carter's National Security Council staff, and as Professor Emeritus at the U.S. Naval War College. I'm very pleased to present Professor Catherine Kelleher.
As one of the founding 9, those who founded the School of Public Policy 30 years ago, I have had the honor and the pleasure of watching the development of the school and the many achievements that have earned it national and international status. But the key focus at the school has always and rightly been on the students and their achievements. That makes me particularly proud to help recognize students who have a unique opportunity within federal service over the coming years. The Presidential Management Fellows Program was established by executive order in 1977 to attract to the federal service outstanding individuals from a wide variety of academic disciplines who were particularly skilled in the analysis and management of public policy and public programs. Fellows are selected nationally through a highly competitive process. The extraordinary nature of this year's graduating class is reflected in the fact that this year's class boasts 3, count them, 3 Presidential Management Fellows. As I announce this year's fellows, I would like them to please stand up and remain standing until each of the fellows has been announced. Please hold your applause until the end. This year's Presidential Management Fellows are Mario Borowitz, Peter Cairns, and Krista Heiner.
Now, announcing this year's Excellence in Scholarship Award is Professor Daniel Levine. Professor Levine holds a PhD in philosophy from Georgetown University. He specializes in moral and philosophical issues surrounding international law and peacekeeping. He's been awarded a prestigious Fulbright Fellowship for study in Ghana, and he's the author of the forthcoming book, The Morality of Peacekeeping. Professor Levine.
Each year, we like to recognize the graduate in the Master of Public Policy program who managed to get through a very challenging and diverse curriculum with the highest academic performance among his or her peers. We further recognize their achievement by hanging their picture in the school's hallways to inspire future students. The Master of Public Policy graduate whose academic performance was the very highest in this year's graduating class is Aaron Christopher Barker. Please rise, Mr. Barker. Congratulations.
Aaron, congratulations from all of us. Let me ask you to put yourself in a time machine, go back 5 years, and try to imagine a wilder roller coaster ride than the 2008 vice presidential campaign. Senator Joe Biden was a sometimes unpredictable running mate for Barack Obama. Alaska Governor Sarah Palin was the even more unpredictable maverick. The epic battle produced the most watched vice presidential debate in American history. So the question, who should get the job of moderating that debate? The Commission on Presidential Debates turned to our speaker this evening, distinguished reporter Gwen Ifill. Ms. Ifill has long hosted the superb PBS program, Washington Week in Review, and she's senior correspondent for the NewsHour. She's been a distinguished reporter for the Baltimore Sun, Washington Post, New York Times, and that outstanding record got her a job at the center of the hottest political story of the last decade, and it's a job that she mastered to widespread applause. She has covered 7 presidential campaigns. She also moderated the 2004 vice presidential debate between Dick Cheney and John Edwards. Her work hosting Washington Week in Review has won the coveted George Foster Peabody Award. That award committee called her work the gold standard for public affairs enthusiasts who prefer illumination to confrontational fireworks. Gwen Ifill is the author of the best-selling book, The Breakthrough: Politics and Race in the Age of Obama. She is just back from covering demonstrations in Israel and is returning to our wild week here in Washington. In both places she's written, she's witnessed geopolitical poker, where one side digs in its heels, another throws rocks over the wall, and where there's precious little incentive for compromise. Gwen Ifill is unquestionably one of the most experienced and thoughtful observers of American, indeed, and global politics working in journalism today. In fact, during the 2008 vice presidential debate, 2 friends were watching the debate on TV. One asked, who was moderating? And the answer was, well, it's Gwen Ifill with PBS. Well, the friend sitting on the couch turned and said, well, after tonight, I have a feeling she can be with whoever she wants. And this evening, she's with us. It is my great pleasure to introduce award-winning journalist Gwen Ifill.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean Kettle, and thank you all not only for having me here tonight, but also for what you're about to do for the world. We're about to unleash you, and we have big expectations. I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but by earning this degree, you've cut a deal with the rest of us that you will give back more than you get or than you've gotten. Now, I come to you tonight kind of overwhelmed by the week in the news business, by the politics of Benghazi, by news of sexual assaults in the military that seems to just keep getting worse, by revelations that the government agency that Americans most love to hate, the IRS, has earned its stripes by allegedly targeting Tea Party groups, by evidence that the Department of Justice has spread its net so far and so wide that no reporter who wants to investigate national security issues can be sure that his or her phone records won't be secretly subpoenaed. And that just happened this week. It's a good thing that Americans have a finely tuned sense of humor, the absurd, and also a sense of proportion, which we don't often have in Washington. Now, this can be seen a couple of ways. The bad way is that they don't care about what's going on in Washington, the American people. And to a certain degree, that is correct. But there is also a good interpretation, and I guess it's the one I choose. As we watched all the scandals unfold and the elections roll by, we are reminded that in spite of it all, Americans still do look kind of reflexively to government to address the big questions about war and peace, about health and welfare, and about our future as a democratic republic that is supposed to be an example to the rest of the world. But first, we have to believe ourselves in the power of change to make us better. Change, as you're discovering today, is as terrifying as it is necessary. You could have, for instance, passed on this opportunity to earn this focused degree, to dedicate your lives to public service. You've decided that you had other places to go, other places to hide. But you are here tonight because there is work to do. You look around you and you look up on this stage at your faculty, you look up among your professors, and certainly among the proud alumni of this program, and you see the leadership that you can aspire to. You look down the highway to Washington, D.C., or up the highway to Annapolis or any other of the 50 state capitals, and you can see, when it comes to government and government service, why you are essential. But to fulfill your dreams for you and your dreams for us, you have to look up. During the last New Hampshire primary, I've been to New Hampshire a lot over the years, but I was traveling with a colleague who was fairly new to the state and was trying to figure out how to get somewhere, maybe to a John Huntsman interview, which seemed like a big deal at the time. And he was convinced he could get us anywhere we needed to get by just plugging the address into the GPS, and it would get us there. That often worked. But I was sitting in the passenger seat of the car one night, and it soon became clear to me that we were going in circles. We were kind of lost. Or at least he was. Because as we continued around in circles, I thought to look up and glance outside the window, and I saw our destination lit up with a big neon sign. The GPS could not get us there, but we could get there if only we looked up. The same thing happened to me one day, and this is a little embarrassing, but I'm going to share it with you because it's just friends here, right? I was walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. I was on my way to meet a colleague for a meeting at the White House. I was running late. I was looking down, texting furiously. I'm on my way, when I misjudged the curb, and I fell flat on my face in the middle of the street, America's street. I was humiliated and helped to my feet by a uniformed Secret Service officer and by a man who turned out to be the Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Only in Washington would that happen. Oh, I know you. I see you on TV. Is your knee scarred? It was lovely. And the worst thing is, of course, if I had only looked up, I would have seen my colleague standing in front of the Northwest Gate waving at me. Instead of texting, I could have been there. So, as you look forward, success can be as simple as that. If you fix your eyes on the ground, only looking as far as your next step, or if you keep your eyes glued only to the GPS, you may get where you're going eventually, but it will surely take you a long time. Plus, the other thing that happens when you're glancing down is you miss the scenery along the way, the detours that take you to places that are unexpected, the things you didn't plan, and the setbacks that teach you something you didn't know. Another story. A few years ago, I was sitting on my couch on a Sunday night, decompressing, dreading the next day, when I realized, as things were unfolding around me, that all of my life experiences were colliding. There was an infamous radio DJ who had just insulted the amazing young women of the Rutgers basketball team. You may remember this. I won't repeat what he said there, but suffice it to say, there was afterward ritual outrage, demands for apologies and resignation, you know the drill. The usual suspects, the usual denunciations. But it occurred to me that night as I was watching about this that the loud and predictable argument that everyone was having about free speech and race and misogyny and sports was missing something essential. No one had ever mentioned the players by their names. These young women had done something remarkable, and yet their achievement was being reduced to a slur, a stereotype. Their names, which sounded alien to some people, sounded musical to me. Their story, the underdogs overcoming the odds and breaking through to the finals, that story had been lost somewhere along the way, which somehow struck a chord with me. Not only as a Black woman who has endured an occasional slur, but also as a citizen of the world who buys into the notion that achievement should be rewarded, not punished. So I flipped open my laptop and poured my thoughts into it. And it occurred to me as I started to write that I was the only one who could say this, what I needed to say. I, you see, had once been a target of that same DJ, but more important, after years in journalism, I realized that I had a platform. I had access to this megaphone that these young women did not. So I was able to write an op-ed that was published in the New York Times. And this is part of what I said. Every time a young Black girl approaches me shyly and asks for an autograph or writes or calls or stops me on the street to ask how she can become a journalist, I feel an enormous responsibility. It's more than simply being a role model. I know I have to be a voice for them as well. So here's what this voice has to say for people who cannot grasp the notion of picking on people their own size. This country will only flourish once we consistently learn to applaud and encourage the young people who have to work harder just to achieve balance on the unequal playing field. Now, I retell all of this not to pat myself on the back or to reopen old wounds, but to make sure that we do not lose sight of the larger achievement in moments like this. That lesson that day was about what we can be. Because of the life I'd led and the experiences I'd had, I could be the necessary voice that day. The necessary voice. If you take nothing else away from this place and what you have learned here and what you will take out the door, know that you too can be and must be that necessary voice. You have the equipment. Your voice can invest in the power of possibility. It can relish the unexpected. It can look away from the GPS. It can claim the path that you never really intended to take. There is a lot of work to be done, and only a select few who actually are willing and equipped to do it. You are now in that cohort. They are all looking up at you. So, with this degree in hand, there are options and choices out there for you that others don't have. But you have to look up. There is information to be had, facts to share, solutions to discover, but only if you look up. There is time we have, time we lack, and the ability to take advantage of both. The clock is on the wall, it is ticking, but in order to see how the time is moving, you have to look up. This means that there are risks to be taken. And when I turn the page, I'll tell you what those risks are. Looking up sometimes means your head is so far in the clouds that you do not see the grounding reality at your feet. For instance, that everything you want you cannot have. But you have to take those risks or it's not worth it. You have to choose hope over despair, change over inaction. This is why I do what I do. I do not live in China or Kenya or Zimbabwe, where they shut down your newspaper or your television when you speak up, especially when you criticize the government. I do not live in places where writing the truth can get you killed. I live in a place where the First Amendment provides a cloak and a responsibility. If I were a teenager in Pakistan who spoke up for girls' education, I would risk being shot in the head by a Taliban gunman. But there is victory to be achieved. When Malala Yousafzai returned to school, she was carrying a bright pink backpack, and she was returning to school. It's important to be reminded how easily we can be denied, how low the ceilings can get, and how much fortitude it takes to refuse to accept the limits that others can place on you. But you now have the skills to transcend those limits. As a journalist, I have enviable access to events, the chance to ask questions and demand answers, even though I don't always get them, witness those vice presidential debates. But it doesn't mean that you can't push for those answers, not necessarily to be annoying, although sometimes it helps to be annoying. It means you have to fulfill the responsibility. It's that deal that we cut when they let us in the door. Whose stories can you tell? Whose voices are not being heard? Which stories and which voices go unheard? And what are you willing to do about it? I have a little flat spot on the front of my head that comes from banging my head against walls my entire career, trying to break them down, forcing diversity of thought and opinion into newsrooms and onto the air. Whatever you do with your lives, I hope you get those little flat spots too. Someone has to keep banging their heads against the wall. First comes the achievement. You've done that here today. You have had access to a remarkable education and a wonderful diving board from which to leap into your lives and chase your dreams. But next comes the responsibility that grows from that achievement. You are responsible for your language, for your behavior, for the paths you choose to pursue, and the honor with which you do pursue them. That I cannot stress enough, the honor. Then comes the execution. follow through. There's so much that the world needs that can be provided by committed people like you, folks who have been given the opportunity so many others have not, that it is a crime to sit on the sidelines. But you have to pick your fights. Too much scattershot protest can cost you your audience. How many times have you simply stopped listening to the person who always seems the first one up at the microphone telling you what you need to believe whenever there's a protest? It's good to speak up when it matters, but it's also good to keep your peace when it really doesn't, picking your fights. So what do you care about? Where can you make a difference? And how do you go about doing that? One way is not to get wedded to the shoulds in life. You know, you should be married, you should be getting your advanced degree, you should be making a lot of money, you should be doing what's expected of you. Instead, devote these next few weeks and months of your life thinking of the coulds. What could you do? How could you go about doing it? And maybe along the way you won't do things in the order you had in mind. Who's to say that's not the way your life was supposed to be lived? This is a great day. These are hopeful times in spite of all the ways we can look at the unhopeful. And the potential for change is all around us. You can strive for excellence. You can turn the negative into opportunities, and you can stay focused on the coulds. I have a confession to make. As I was growing up, one of my favorite books, no, it wasn't the Iliad. It was Winnie the Pooh. I think I found something appealing in the contrast between Pooh's kind of nervous, antic nature and Tigger's excitement and Eeyore's depression. Pooh's author, A.A. Milne, understood the benefits of that unlikely combination. And he wrote, "One of the advantages of being disorderly is that one is constantly making exciting discoveries," which is how I explain my desk at work. But that's why I'm a journalist, because I think there are always new and exciting discoveries around the corner. That's why you will be public servants to the people who make those discoveries. Discoveries in an age where everyone has an opinion, but so little of it is new and so much of it is trite. Discoveries in an age when we are bombarded with so much information and so little news. Discoveries in a time when so much of what passes for inspiration lacks true insight. Discoveries that move us to seize responsibility rather than to grudgingly fulfill obligation. And discoveries in a time when we continue to demand, the right to ask questions. That's where you come in. We are counting on you. We are counting on you like we never have before. We are counting on you to rise to the challenge. We are counting on you to make honorable choices along the way, to take the correct lessons from war and peace, and politics and policy, and terrorism and trial, and to know how important it is to apply those learned lessons well. If along the way here at Maryland you've learned all that, if your learning does not end today with that degree, and if you understand that the opportunities are only beginning, then you will make us all proud. We are counting on your commitment, your passion, and your skill to fix something that you see as wrong, to alter the preordained conversation, and to teach the people around you that change is scary and it is risky, but it is satisfying and it is achievable, especially if you look up. Thank you so much for having me. I am very honored.
Thanks so much, Ms. Eiffel, for those inspirational words, for not only challenging us to look up, but challenging our students and our graduates to keep the deal that they've made. We appreciate so much your serving as a role model for those of us who want to make a difference through public service. Let me share, as a small thank you, some remembrances of your trip here with our thanks for inspiring us at the commencement ceremony today. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. First, the director of our doctoral program, Professor David Crocker, will honor our PhD graduates. Professor Crocker earned his PhD from Yale University and has been part of the school family since 1993. He specializes in the ethics of international development and democratic movements. Professor Crocker.
It's my pleasure to honor the 8 students who are graduating this year with their PhD in policy studies, 5 of whom are able to be with us today. This degree marks the culmination of many years of work at the highest level of the field. Our PhD graduates generally become the teachers of the next generation of policy students or researchers in major policy research think tanks. Today's first graduate is Mariel Michelle John Borowitz, and her faculty advisor is Professor John Steinbrother. Mariel Michelle John Borowitz has analyzed the contribution of space satellite instruments to the measurement of climate events. She finds their data being reliably collected for less than half of the essential climate variables that are dependent on satellite observation. She also finds that data is being globally shared for only about 1/3 of those variables. She recommends that the more advanced arrangements for collecting and sharing weather data be extended to climate data as well. Congratulations.
You're not going to escape that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Our next PhD graduate is Soumya Chattopadhyay. Soumya's advisor is Carol Graham, who is unable to be here today, but ably represented by another member of the committee, Medea Afzal. Soumya used novel metrics of well-being to assess the welfare effects of the 2009 financial crisis on individuals around the world. He finds that individuals in countries that were more integrated in the world economy suffered greater losses in well-being. He also identifies a new vulnerable cohort, that is middle income, middle-aged, and relatively well-educated. Their vulnerability is precisely due to the investments they have made to participate in and benefit from new global economic trends. And yet they are now facing increasing exposure to shrinking opportunities. And that's a sobering thought for all of you here in gowns and ready to graduate. Today's next PhD graduate is Naratunya Chulabat. Her advisor is Peter Reuter. Nara argues that Mongolia's transition from communist dictatorship and central plan to democracy and the market has been a success story. This is especially true if one compares Mongolia to other countries in the region with similar historical, economic, political background. One is left wondering why a country with no experience of the market, 70 years of communist regime, complete economic dependence on the Soviet Union, and geographically removed from other democratic regimes, made a successful transition. Nara solves this problem by looking at the historical, structural, political, institutional, and cultural factors that contributed to the way the transition proceeded in Mongolia. Congratulations. Today's next PhD graduate is Charles Thomas Harry. Professor John Steinbrenner is his advisor. Charlie Harry has applied adaptive agent modeling techniques to explore how varying economic circumstances among individuals might contribute to the outbreak of civil conflict. He finds that both the level and distribution of individual economic fortunes can affect the onset, evolution, magnitude, and the frequency of civil instability. Congratulations. Today's fifth and final PhD graduate is Daria Alexia Eretnikov. Her advisor is Rob Sprinkle. Daria asked and answered this question: have the national resources inventories advanced conservation policy? Impetus for this study was Daria's fascination with government's habitual and sometimes mindless collecting of numbers. At the United States Department of Agriculture, she saw the national resources inventories as an example of this behavior. But she found at USDA no ready answer to her question. She then set out to find the answer herself. In so doing, she produced the first ever history of her topic, an analysis based on primary sources amassed qualitatively and quantitatively. Daria organized a blizzard of heterogeneous materials to render original judgments. Did the NRA's advance conservation policy? From the 143,219 words, 48 graphs, and 1,820 footnotes, she deduced an answer: yes. The USDA created a permanent position for her. The School of Public Policy nominated her work for a prize, and she'll be back next year as an adjunct assistant professor, rejuvenating one of our school's signature courses, ecological economics. Congratulations. Is it okay, right? It's all yours.
Thank you very much. We will now honor our outstanding master's class of 2013. Will the master's class of 2013 please rise and approach the stage? Introducing them will be Taryn Faulkner, the Director of Admissions for the program.
The candidates for the Master of Public Policy degree are Lindsay Camilla Allman, Martin Alessandro, Patrick McGrath Amuso, Chase N. Ballinger, Molly Lillian Barg Walco, Aaron Christopher Barker, Sergio Barreras Pereira Pinto, David Scott Beardwood, Juan Segundo Baloc, Kirk Andrew Benson, Alejandro Joaquin Butel, Joseph Wilbar Bledsoe III, Adele Elizabeth Byrne, Michael James Kukoski, Peter Edward Cairns, Sarah Risek Cardona, Alex Benjamin Chaffetz,
Oh, congratulations.
William Matthew. We'll start over. He wanted to take her with him. William Matthew Chudkowski.
Congratulations.
Evan Tristan Cook. Margaret Ford Kraushaw. Courtney Blair Davis. Thomas J. DeGeno, Jr. Andrea Dodson. Lindsay Catherine Earhart. Maria Jose Escalante. Andres Jose Fijo. Jonathan Henley Ferguson. Stephanie Rachel Foner. Gayatri, okay, bear with me. Gayatri Vijay Prakash Gadag. Michael Jonathan Garber. Rachel Elizabeth Gertzen. Andrew Ross Goddard. Stephen J. Goldstein. Susan Julia Gore. Charlotte Irene Griggs. Baruch Hargu. Warren Augustine Hayes. Krista Corrine Heiner. Robert Brian Hemker, Jr. Jessica Faye Higgins. Colin Avery Hood. Syed Sarah Hussain. Margaret Sheehan Imhold. Nikita Kandpal. Julia Jeon Kim. Everett Stone Kimball. Zachary Christian Landis. Caitlin Alexis Lantner. Jill Lau. Ray Lee. Yajun Lee. Luke John Lindberg. Luisa Fernanda Lopez Gordillo. Valerie Lebrano. Amy Elizabeth McCowan. Richard James McGill III. Daniel Allen McAvoy. Tiffany Michelle Miller. Tara Fatima Mastadab. Travis William Motts. Wesley Ryan Newman. Tam Nguyen. Luci Cynthia Asueki. Ty Buchanan Payne. Scarlett Elamina Pena. Mark Henry Perlman. Chad L. Perman. Megan O'Rourke Rees. Colin Knight Ramoser. Michael Ross Rosenberg. Nina Beth Rosenberg. Robert Perry Rosenthal. Nicholas Roth. Christopher James Roselle. Katrina E. Ruday. Allison DeRosier Schneider. Joel Ira Schwarz. Amber Renee Sells. Caroline Elizabeth Smith. Michael Timothy Spetz. Jyothis Srikumar. Rachel Rebecca Tennant. Nicole Mia Thompson. Tsunami I. Toganu Bickerstaff. Chelsea Paige Turner. Jeremy R. Turret. Mary Claire Wadlinger. Wenchi Wei. Caitlin Renee Zachary. Victor Zagreba. Miao Zhang. Yu Zhang. Shuai Zhao. The candidates for the Master of Public Management degree are Craig Arney, Johnny Berberon, Luis Burgos, Unica Davis McKinney, Melissa Spaden Finkel. Derek Lawrence Green. Rosario Japson. Dominique Isabel Kaiser. Rang Hee Kim. Bria Diane McElroy. Corinne Elizabeth Moncrief. Hip Win. Nathan Weichelt Rogers. Shuchita Sonalika. Wade Allen Sorensen. Joshua L. Tolkien. The candidates for the Master of Engineering and Public Policy degree are Prithvi Sudhakar Acharya. Alexana Kranmer. Alex Eggerding. Leah Flake. Abdur Rahman Khan. Daniel McGarry Oates. Stephen Joseph Oleg.
Let me ask all the graduates to stand and a warm round of congratulations to the class of 2013. Now, one last thing. There's a long tradition at commencement step that the graduates must take before you can truly count yourself as graduated. It's time to move the tassel from the right to the left. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Please be seated. One last piece of business I want to try to take care of today, and I'd ask Executive Dean Bill Powers to please stand. I've learned that this marks Bill Powers' 75th University of Maryland commencement. How, you might ask, could that be possible? He's done this for 25 years, and for 25 years he's not missed a commencement in December. The university commencement that we held before this one, and the School of Public Policy commencement as well. That makes it number 75. Thanks to Bill. This concludes our formal commencement ceremony. I ask you to please remain seated until the platform party has recessed. But importantly, 2 things. First, graduates and faculty, after you leave, please move to the large staircase outside and to the left outside the theater so that we can take a picture of the newly minted Maryland School of Public Policy class of 2013. So out and to the left, and we'll do that quickly, and then be able to adjourn to the reception for our graduates over at the Riggs Alumni Center. We hope to see all of you there very shortly. Congratulations and thank you to all of all. Go Terps!
you.